Thank you, Dr. Fauci. Well, let's get straight to the point.
Okay.
We have. I was telling people that I was a little bit concerned, and so I had a lot of doubts about the vaccine, and then I got this invitation to talk to you, so it would be really helpful for all of us to learn and to understand about the vaccine. So, first question. Which of the COVID-19 vaccines have been officially approved by the FDA?
3 of them. One from Moderna, which is the mRNA vaccine. One from Pfizer, which is another mRNA vaccine. And the other one is from J&J, Johnson & Johnson, which is a little bit different. It gives the same kind of response, but it's a little bit different. So there are 3 vaccines that have gotten emergency use authorization from the FDA so far.
But I'm going to play here the devil's advocate to understand better. I asked if it was approved by the FDA, but I think that it's a different thing an emergency use authorization than an approval. So what is the difference between an emergency use authorization and an official approval by the FDA?
Yes, that's a very good question. So an emergency use authorization is based on the criteria if the benefit clearly outweighs the risk and that you get a good degree of efficacy and safety. The full licensure is when you follow it for a longer period of time and you get more information and data. I have no doubt, given how very, very efficacious all 3 of these are, that they will ultimately get the full authorization in the sense of what's called a biological license approval. But an emergency use authorization is really quite of an important step in the direction of getting it the official approval.
Okay, so but if the vaccines are safe and effective, why hasn't the FDA given any of them the full official approval and license?
Actually, Eugenio, that is a very good question. There isn't like they have any problem with it. It just takes logistically a long time to get the approval. So when this is such a good product,
what's going on here?
That you want to get it to people as quickly as possible because it's life-saving, you give it what's called an emergency use authorization. Not that there's anything less effective in it, you just takes a long time to get the full approval, and rather than deprive people of getting a life-saving vaccine before all of the I's get dotted and the T's get crossed, they give it an emergency use authorization based on a lot of solid data that it works.
What about the long term? What is the medical and legal responsibility of the companies that are making the vaccines? What happens if secondary effects are seen, let's say, in 5 or 10 years? Can I sue the manufacturer of the product if it hurts me, or if there's long-term effects years down the road?
There is a fund that allows the compensation for injury, but I have to tell you, Eugenio, that it's very, very, very unlikely that you're going to have an effect 5 or 10 years down the pike. The reason we say that is that we have decades of experience in the field of vaccinology, and virtually all of the effects, if they even occur, and they're very rare, occur within 15 to 45 days following the dose.
I'm more concerned about the long-term effects, honestly. So, that's what I asked about if I can sue a manufacturer, but because governments around the world are taking the liability, but I'm talking about the manufacturer. If there's a problem, can I sue the people that made the vaccine, not the government, the people that made the vaccine? Because I've heard they are protected from liability. If they're not willing to stand for their product, or if I can't sue them, does that mean they're worried it's going to hurt people?
They are very sensitive about hurting people, but you can sue anybody you want to sue. There's no guarantee, because it will be in a court that would decide whether or not you get compensation. But we have not had we have not had any issues with that in any of the other vaccines. So I would be really surprised that that's the case.
But let me tell you why. But there's one thing that I suppose would make people or skeptics like me more confident about vaccine. I'm thinking of if they remove the protections on vaccine manufacturers. I think that the ability to be sued, and when I'm talking about suing, is not about money at all. The ability to be sued is what makes companies make a better product. If you take that away, what incentive do they have to fix a problem with their product? You know what I mean? If the manufacturers could be sued for every death and injury that is caused by the vaccination, probably they wouldn't put it in the market right now, or I think they should be responsible for the product they make.
You know, they really actually are. I think one of the things you got to separate is when you get injury in a trial or injury in a product after it has been fully approved. You have the opportunity. I mean, I understand where you're coming from and why you bring it up, but you have the opportunity to sue anybody, anytime, for anything you want to do. That is the truth.
I've heard that the reason people should take vaccines is to create herd immunity. What is herd immunity?
Well, the first reason to take the vaccine is to protect yourself, your family, and your community. Herd immunity refers to a situation where you have a high percentage of people who are vaccinated, so that when the virus enters the community, there are so few people to attack that the virus has a difficulty in propagating itself. And by herd immunity means you get an umbrella of protection because so many people are protected that when the virus comes in, it spreads only when there are a lot of vulnerable people. But if a certain percentage of the people are protected, like with measles, if you get 90% of the people vaccinated with measles, 91, 92%, when you get measles introduced into the community, it will not spread.
Okay. Now, I have friends that consider themselves very healthy. They say they don't need the vaccine. But I've heard that even if healthy people have a very low risk of dying from COVID, they should still get the vaccine so they don't spread the virus to people who might be too old or too sick to get the vaccine. Is that true?
That's absolutely true. So an example, if you're a young, healthy person, statistically, the chances are that if you get infected, you're not going to get seriously ill. The people who get seriously ill and die, and I must point out, as I think you know, already there have been 525,000 deaths in this country, which is absolutely terrible. The worst of any pandemic in over 100 years. But when you get vaccinated, not only do you protect yourself, but you prevent yourself from inadvertently and maybe innocently and unknowingly infecting someone who is a loved one, a family member, or just maybe somebody in society who, if they did get infected, they would have a serious consequence.
And now I have a question about that. The news has reported that the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines are 95% effective. Does this mean that if I get the vaccine, I won't get infected with the SARS-CoV-2 virus?
That means that there's a 95% chance that you will not get symptomatic infection, namely that you won't get infected to the point that you get symptoms. But we are unsure right now what the protection is against infection, because it's conceivable that you could get vaccinated, get exposed, get infected, not know it because the vaccine is protecting you against symptoms, but that you could have virus in your nasopharynx, which is the reason why we say until we prove that the vaccine prevents transmission, that people who are vaccinated should wear a mask when they're near people who might be vulnerable to infection.
Yeah, but I think it's a different thing. To stop the clinical disease or the symptoms is different from getting the virus, the infection, right? So basically the vaccine lowers my symptoms, but it may not prevent me from being infected with SARS-CoV-2, which means there's the possibility that I can still spread the virus even after I receive the vaccine. Correct?
That's the reason why, That's the reason why we ask you to wear a mask after you've been vaccinated.
Okay, but I'm confused with something. I thought herd immunity works because by being vaccinated, I block the virus from spreading to other people. But this vaccine may not do that. So how does herd immunity work if I can still spread the virus even after getting the vaccine?
No, but the fact is the vaccine protects many people from getting infected. Some people might get infected, and they might not even transmit it. We know that some people get infected. We know that. But not everybody who gets the vaccine is going to get infected without symptoms. So the overwhelming majority of the people who get vaccinated not only will not get sick, they won't get infected. But there will be some who might be infected. And when they are infected, it is unlikely that they will transmit it.
So there's a possibility that the vaccine can turn people into what is called asymptomatic carriers, which means they don't have symptoms, but they're still contagious, correct?
Yes, we've said that. That's true.
Boy, Fauci looks like he's getting pissed off. That yes, we've said that. That's true. I mean, I don't know how the audience has seen this, but I'm telling you, this is just pure joy for me because I've been wanting to have a conversation like this. I've been waiting for Chris. Will somebody at a network actually drill down? And once you do, you can tell he just absolutely averts. At one point, he's saying, no, that's why we're telling you to wear a mask, because you can still be spreading it. And then by the end, he's like, well, no, it's very few people that, can be infected. And then gets nailed with, well, that's an asymptomatic carrier. And I love the line when he says, how do you get to herd immunity if you can still spread the virus? I mean, it's such a simple question, isn't it? The one I've been wanting to ask.
It's not that hard. He didn't drill down too hard. It was some basic questions. So any news agency that wants to increase their ratings, I mean, this interview from Eugenio has like over 1 million views. Wow. Start asking these questions. Just ask a couple follow-up questions. Okay, so it doesn't stop transmission. What do the headlines look like? Yeah. Check this one out. This is out of CBC. This is new outbreak of COVID-19 in BC care home where 82% of residents were already vaccinated. Not stopping transmission.
We're seeing that all over the place, aren't we? We're seeing these outbreaks long after even the second shot.
Absolutely.
Unbelievable.
Absolutely.
All right, let's check out this last video. And by the way, I think that Eugenio should probably open a school of journalism for everybody in mainstream media right now so they can learn how to do their jobs. Take a look at this.
I know we're running out of time, but I have some questions from the audience. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine is not an mRNA vaccine, correct?
Correct.
What kind of vaccine is it?
It's a vaccine that uses a harmless common cold virus in which you insert the gene of the protein that you want the body to make an immune response against. You inject it, the body sees the protein, makes an immune response, and then protects you against infection.
There are many Latinos in the community that are practicing Catholics. Last week, Catholic bishops warned the Catholic community that they should not use the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Can you explain why?
Well, some, not all, because there are Catholic bishops who are saying the opposite of that. And the reason is in the preparation of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, they used a cell line that was taken from fetal tissue from years and years ago to be able to produce the vaccine. So some of the bishops felt that because that was used, that we should not use the vaccine. But many Catholics...
Sorry, is that true that there is a residual DNA from an aborted baby in the Johnson & Johnson vaccine?
No, there's no residual DNA that gets injected into you at all. It's in the preparation of the vaccine. There's no residual human fetal DNA at all.
No residual human DNA at all. Jeffrey, is that a true statement?
That seems like a slow pitch softball here to knock out of the park. I do believe that is not true. Let's look at the fact sheet. We covered this last week. This is the fact sheet J&J for healthcare providers administering the vaccine. And it says each dose may also contain residual amounts of host cell proteins less than or equal to 0.15 micrograms and or host cell DNA less than or equal to 3 nanograms.
And for 50 points, what was the host cell that was being used to work on this product?
I believe it was a retina cell from an abortion many, many, many years ago.
Yes, but not as many years ago as the MMR vaccine. My understanding is this aborted baby happened in 1985, not the ones we keep hearing about in the 1960s. I was corrected. There's one more video, and I think it's important, even though, you know, we got to move on with the rest of the show. We've got a huge story coming up. I actually think this is going to lead in that story very well. Eugenio really drills down on something that is critical, and that's the variants that we're seeing, the mutations of the virus. Look at how he nails Fauci against the wall here.
With over so many variants and counting, how effective are each of the approved vaccines?
The most prevalent variant in the United States is the one from the UK called the 117. And the vaccines that are available right now are highly effective against that particular variant. It's less effective against the South African variant, but that is not a prevalent variant in this country right now. The most prevalent one is the one from the UK.
And what if I get the vaccine, but it doesn't protect me against the new variant? Because I've heard that pharmaceuticals are working on a third booster shot. Is that true?
Yes, but let me explain what happened in a trial in South Africa with the J&J vaccine. It didn't completely protect against getting infected or getting symptoms, but it totally protected you against getting into the hospital and dying. So when you get exposed to a variant, you may not be completely protected, but it has a very, very good at protecting you from getting seriously ill.
And this third booster shot that they're working on, that says to me that probably they're not confident that the 2 shots are going to be good enough. Does it mean that the vaccine doesn't work against variants?
No, they're not saying that. They want to be doubly sure in case they have to give a booster. They want to determine what the effect of that booster is. So in order to be doubly sure, we're proceeding with studies to see what happens when you give a third shot. That has nothing to do with being confident or not confident. It means you want to be doubly sure that you're covering all the bases.